politics, protests, human rights, justice, equity, community. RaceAware. What's up, everybody, and welcome to RaceAware, the podcast all about American race history and its overall impact on the lives of the marginalized. I'm Dr. Elise Richey, coming to you with my co-hosts Tony Szynski and Dan Sauber. Let's get started. All right, Tony, what do we have today on our show?
Today we're going to look at generational wealth gap. And before we start in, I wanted to just give you some basic statistics. These come out of the Federal Reserve Bank, and these come out as of September of 2020.
Okay.
And basically, it broke it down into white, black, Hispanic, and under 35 years of age, 35 to 54, and over 55.
Okay.
So in the under 35 category, the mean average, whites under 35, by the time typically they're 35, they have $25,000 in the bank. Blacks would have $600 in the bank. Hispanics, $11,000 in the bank.
Okay, wait. Say that again. You said that by the time they're 35?
35, a typical white family would have amassed $25,000 either in equity, stocks, bonds, cash in the bank, whatever. A black family is $600. Hispanic family, $11,000. It jumps up between 35 and 54. The white family has amassed $185,000. The black family, $40,000. The Hispanic family, $46,000. And then a retirement age over 55, a white family has amassed $315,000. Black family, $53,000. Hispanic family, $111,000.
That's amazing.
And this was done in 2020, and these are using 2019 actual data.
And is that also including the taking into account the Great Recession?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So when we talk about generational wealth gap, there have been two really good examples that have come out in the last couple of weeks. Obviously, we've had the Tulsa Riot Massacre in the news within the last week or so.
Right.
And one of the things I heard about that was there was a family that had a hotel in Greenwood in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
And, or I should say in Tulsa in Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, before the riot or the race massacre, it was valued at just under $2 million. They had figured that by today, that building and business would be worth about $20 million. Now, as we remember, when that race massacre riot occurred, they burned Greenwood down.
They did.
It was everything was totally lost.
And the insurance companies weren't made to pay the black families. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Yeah, they did not have to pay the black families.
Why am I not surprised?
You should be surprised.
Which actually will fit into the second part of the story. So while that's going on in Tulsa, Oklahoma, out in California, and don't forget we had the Grand Migration in the early 1900s.
Right.
We had blacks moving out of the South, going out to the West Coast, going up to Chicago, New York, and just getting out of the South. So we had Willa and Charles Bruce. Charles was a chef on a rail dining car line between Salt Lake City and Los Angeles. And his wife, Willa, they lived in Los Angeles. In 1912, they bought 2 lots of beachfront property from a white land developer for the grand total of $1,225.
Okay.
At the time, blacks were not allowed in white beaches. So they formed their own Black Beach Club. They had a canteen, they had a little hotel, they had a cafe, and while Charles was out being the chef on the rail lines, his wife Willa ran this very successful business, which was basically a Black Beach Club in Manhattan Beach, California. By 1924, actually starting about 1920, it became so successful, other black families were moving into the area, and the whites did not like this new increase in the black neighborhood that was forming. The KKK reared their heads. They started harassing the Black Beach Club. They put up signs saying no trespassing, 10-minute parking only. They tried to set part of the lodge on fire. There was lots of intimidation. And then in 1924, the city did their dirty work and closed them down and took the property away under eminent domain. The family then spent the next couple of years trying to sue the city for what they felt was a reasonable cost of taking their land and their buildings. They sought $120,000 in compensation. After years in court, in 1929, they received $14,000.
That's despicable.
Well, today that property is worth $72 million. And just this past year, the City Council of Los Angeles, Manhattan Beach, has ruled that they are giving that property back to the descendants of the Bruce family.
I wonder why they decided to do that.
Well, the Bruce family, their descendants, they left. They were basically blacklisted. They couldn't buy any property in the surrounding area. They were basically hustled out of town. Every year, since about the 1970s, the descendants have had a Bruce family Memorial Day at this particular beach. The city of Los Angeles made it into an ambulance or a lifeguard training center. So it was first a park, then became a training center for lifeguards. And that way it was kept out of the public's hands, but still the city owned it and kept it out of the Bruce family hands. So after all this time, the Bruce family sued, and
they sued again.
They sued again, and this time they won. And right now they've got to change state law to make the transfer happen, but it is happening. So we talk about generational wealth gap. Here's a situation where a family bought property in the early 1900s, had a business on it. If they had been allowed to pass that down to their family over the course of several generations, today it'd be worth $72 million.
Wow.
Yep.
And that family got absolutely nothing for the 60, 70, 80, 100 years that the city had the property.
It's just unspeakable.
Yeah.
Hotel in Tulsa, valued at $2 million, now worth about $20 million. And this property bought for $1,200, now worth $72 million. And in both cases, the succeeding families lost out on any money from that.
And make no mistake, this is just two of a plethora of examples.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I mean, just think Tulsa alone, how many businesses were in Greenwood? I mean, you had tailors, butchers, any business you can think about, they had it.
They had everything because they were self-sufficient. They had to be because of the segregation.
Doesn't that play into the hands on what's happening right here in Jacksonville with the Orange Crush Festival? Now, I'm new to the area, so I'm not familiar with it. But with a lot of the restaurants and stuff that have decided not to open, doesn't that play right into this whole
Have you seen that, Will?
topic?
No, I haven't.
So next month, the Orange Crush Festival is coming to Jacksonville Beach. And basically, it's a black college gathering.
Right.
Now, I don't care if it's black college kids, white college kids. Typically, college kids don't have a whole lot to spend.
Right.
What they are going to spend is going to be on most likely booze.
Most likely.
And they're not going to tip that well. I don't care what race they are. College kids don't tip well.
Right. Well, they're not swimming in money, most of them.
Right. But if you had white college kids coming in, you would not have businesses, hotels, and restaurants closing because of staff concerns. But now the Orange Crush Festival is coming in, and now there's Land Shark, Margaritaville, and one other place that are closed while Orange Crush is happening because of staff safety concerns.
And aren't the restaurants and the bars that complain the most about having to shut down during 2020 and COVID? And now they're shutting down again when they supposedly need all this revenue to come in.
Right.
Right. They're voluntarily shutting down.
Uh-huh.
And I'd be curious to see how many have taken PPP loans as well, too.
Yeah.
But, that's the irony of this whole thing. And one of the guest hosts on one of the news shows made a comment that rings true. She said that racism costs the United States billions of dollars, which is true.
I'm sure it does.
Yes.
Right, because you're consolidating wealth to only one portion, a small portion of people, and the masses are not able to regenerate wealth and funnel it back into the economy. Do you understand? I mean, if you have 10 people and only one person is wealthy, out of the other 9 people that are left, you have maybe 2 or 3 that are considered middle class, and the rest are struggling, right? The middle class can't possibly put in enough economic stimulus into the system to fortify the system and make it stronger. That one person that's wealthy can't buy enough things to stimulate the economy.
That's why our middle class is depleting.
The middle class is depleting.
So are you saying trickle-down economics does not work?
Yes, trickle-down economics does not work.
No.
Oh, my goodness.
My God.
I think when kids start learning math for the first time, they know this, okay? I don't understand why grown people, I understand why grown people don't want to admit that it doesn't work, because they're the ones that are the recipients of the funneling of the of the funds. So this is, this wealth gap is another topic that the powers that be denied was even happening, was even occurring. Even when it first started and the economists were ringing the warning signal that this is happening, they were denying it all along. And it only got wider and wider over the years.
Right. In fact, when I knew Tony was going to do the wealth gap, I really didn't understand it completely, but found a statistic, because I am concerned about the middle class because that's who I am. But according to the research I did in 1971, the middle class was at 61%. In 2019, it's dropped to 51%.
Yeah.
So our middle class is shrinking, and which means I'm disappearing, and that scares the hell out of me a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it's that continued unequal distribution of wealth.
Right.
People are not looking for a handout. People just want that if I put my work in, I want to be compensated for it, and I want to be able to have a quality of life that reflects the work that I'm putting in for society.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting too. We talk about a living wage, and right now it seems the hardest hit through COVID has been hospitality, restaurants, hotels, whatever. Having had worked in hospitality for so many years, typically speaking, a waiter, waitress, person responsible, living off of tips, only gets paid a fraction of what is the legal minimum wage. Mm-hmm. So the legal minimum wage is $7.25 or $7.50 an hour right now. I can tell you that in certain states, it does vary by state, but you can pay a waiter as low as $3 an hour, and that's why they live off of tips, because they're making next to nothing. Now, if the restaurants would just pay a decent wage, and we got rid of tipping just like they do in Europe, it's an actual profession that people are proud to have, it probably all won't work itself out of the wash.
Yeah.
If I paid a fair price for a person serving me, but didn't have to tip at the end of the meal, I'm sure it would work out.
Right. The statistics are the ones that I have from 2007. I don't know if you have more recent statistics, but from 2007, they said that the top 20% of the wealthiest Americans possess 80% of all financial assets.
Actually, I believe now that's up to about 85%.
So that's gone up.
It's gone up.
And it's still about 20%. However, I thought I saw that the 20% have decreased. So that means some people are in that high percentage wealthy category. They're losing their positions as well.
Yes, and the top 1% is gaining at an exponential speed.
Exponential rate. In 2007, the top 1% of Americans own 35% of the country's total wealth, and I know that that's higher now.
It is higher now.
That's incredible.
It really is.
And you're right.
I was watching a thing last night on the top 5 wealthiest women in the world, and more power to them. 4 of the 5 inherited, and 1 got her money through a divorce. But nonetheless, number 3 was the ex-Mrs. Bezos.
That's funny that you mentioned the top 5 women that are the wealthiest, and it goes contrary to the American philosophy or the American dream, all right? Because none of those women are self-made.
No, it's Mrs. Bezos. It was one of the Koch wives. One of the it was another transfer of wealth. Miriam Adelson. She got her money when she married Sheldon, and he took over Las Vegas, and he passed away. So it was all inherited wealth.
And you see, this is what you're talking about with the Manhattan Project, right?
Right.
A lot of wealth in this country is inherited wealth. And
the irony of that is the first woman to be a millionaire in the United States was a black woman. And she was self-made.
Yes, she was.
She sold beauty products.
That was right. That was Madam C.J. Walker.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just ironic as heck to me.
Yep.
Well, I don't want to be controversial, but when you're used to working for your living, right?
Right.
And you put your head down and you do your work, other people that are not used to working for a living don't understand what goes into that.
That's
right?
True.
So it's easy for them to come and destroy what you created because they don't understand what it took for you to create it.
Right.
And not to mention the fact of what people created on their own, but because of the laws of the time, whether it be slavery or Jim Crow, they had their patents or ideas stolen out from underneath them. Okay, now before we go into break, our next topic will be just a roundtable discussion between ourselves about where we see this movement going and what possibly can happen. But I would like to make an announcement that we are having a drawing for 2 $25 gift cards for one night out at a restaurant and movie tickets and a dinner out. And all you have to do is sign up to one of our categories on Patreon. You've got till July 1st to sign up for it, and we'll have our drawing live on July the 7th. And we'll see you at the turn after we get back from our break.
We love bringing you the RaceAware podcast content. If you like what you hear, find our podcast valuable, and want to help us keep creating our content, show your support by spreading the word and partnering with us on Patreon for as little as $2.99 a month by going to patreon.com/RaceAware. Partners of the show get access to exclusive benefits such as private access to the RaceAware community, the digital downloads, voter power, free access to the live RaceAware lounge, supporter shoutouts, best of all, free RaceAware merchandise, and so much more. Check us out at patreon.com/RaceAware.
Welcome back. Thank you for joining us on RaceAware podcast. And so, guys, what do you think about the idea of reparations, or as I saw one person call it, a love offering? I think I speak for the three of us that if we look at what has been done over the course of the last 150, 200 years, there's been a great injustice done to a whole lot of people. Now, how we fix that, that's anybody's guess. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I think first and foremost, you have to bring people to the table that's going to be affected by it. If they have nothing but analysts and that sort of thing talking about, but the people that are truly affected by it aren't even at the table, that's going to make it a little hard to do, don't you think?
Well, I kind of liken this to what we've been doing over the last 65 years with art that was looted by the Nazis, and now people are trying to claim their family's art back. And the difficulty they're having, because museums now have many of these pieces, they don't want to give up a Van Gogh or a Pizarro or whatever it's going to be. And people are not getting their rightful belongings back. So, and they've got great claims. So I don't understand how we're going to look at bringing people to the table with their claims and doing the right thing by them.
Well, it's one thing to give somebody back a piece of art, okay? But it's enough. How are you going to repair giving people back their relatives that were killed, the opportunities that were lost, and till this day are still being lost? It's not like this has stopped.
But that's just it, Will. In the case of the looted artwork, they've got documentation. They've got the actual piece of property. They can say, look, this was in my grandparents' or great-grandparents' living room. And they can't even get that. And yet here we're talking about things that have been wiped off the face of the earth, like Greenwood, Manhattan Beach, whatever it's going to be. And how are people going to claim that they deserve
what you're saying? What I'm hearing, the only thing I'm hearing is that people who stole are unwilling to give back the property. That's what I'm hearing. Okay.
Oh, that's very true.
All right. So the thing is, they didn't have a problem giving reparations to other people if they wanted to give reparations to. Okay. There was reparations for the Holocaust. Am I right or wrong about that?
Only to the Jews.
Yeah. Well, they're the ones that were impacted, right?
Well, I mean, no. I mean, there were obviously disabled people, the LGBT community,
Catholics.
social dissident, Catholics, gypsies, Romas.
I understand. The point is that it can be done.
Oh, it can.
Sure.
The point that I'm making is that they don't want to do it.
Right.
If you don't want to do something, then you're not going to even come to the table to discuss it, to see how we can do it. And one of the reasons I'm not trying to take up for them at all is because this is insurmountable. You know, it's it's actually, I think, probably easier to do the reparations that they did for the Jews, although they excluded a lot of people, like Tony said. All right? But how are you going to do it for something that went on for hundreds of years?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
All right? The whole thing with the Holocaust, didn't go on for hundreds of years.
Right.
Right? It was literally a finite occurrence compared to the occurrence of slavery against the marginalized, especially the African Americans, starting with the slavery.
Right. Well, if you go back simply to the definition of reparation, it states the making of amends for a wrong one has done by paying money to or otherwise helping those who have been wronged. The problem we've got a group of people in this country that don't believe anybody's been wronged. So that's going to be a hurdle we've got to jump over right at the get-go.
Well,
some people don't believe that anybody's been wronged.
I'm going to suggest that they know. It's not that they don't believe that anybody's been wronged. They know that people have been wronged. How are you going to say that they don't believe it. If they don't believe it was wrong, then why are you trying to stop the history to be taught in the schools?
Right.
It's because you know.
Well, I mean, if you just go on to any of the more conservative or right-leaning boards, I mean, you'll read things such as slavery was not that bad. They were fed and given a roof. They were taken care of. They were given clothing. You know, slavery was a good thing. I mean, there are people out there who are truly warped.
Look, they don't want to even discuss this or look at it for
right
the way it actually is because that would be that they would have to admit what they did. And then the other thing is too, when you talk about, you know, your definition of reparations, Dan, whether it's monetary or fixing situations, that means that our structure, our system here, is based on excluding people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the system in America is based on excluding people. Reparations would not only be monetary, it would have to be that the system would have to be reformed.
Right.
They don't want to reform the system. They want the system that way. They created it that way.
Yeah, they feel like there's nothing that's broke. So as long as they stick to their guns on that.
Right, because that was the intent. That was the intent of the creation. And when black people have been talking about institutional racism, okay, everybody didn't jump on board and say, yes, we understand what you're saying. Even people who were marginalized were still pushing back on that term. Okay, just because something has race in the topic, it doesn't only mean that black people are advocating for only themselves. Black people don't only advocate for themselves. Black people advocate for equality for everyone.
Right. I think that's going to be the key, is that we're all going to have a voice in this.
Everybody has to have a voice in this.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, it's like what people don't realize is when they exclude a particular race of people from something, when they're not making enough money from that exclusion, and believe me, they do make money off of that exclusion, because, you know, with segregation, one of the reasons why you have things like the Tulsa Massacre, right, and people getting their properties taken from eminent domain for any excuse, right, is because when black cities and places that created wealth by creating their own communities and did well, that money was staying in the black community. You understand? Once you destroy it, whatever money people have to purchase things, even necessary things as food, goes back to the white community.
Right. Yep. And they're already filling their quivers.
And it's funny because they're the ones who wanted the segregation. They wanted segregation now, segregation forever, right?
Right.
But then when the black people said, okay, you can have your segregation, we'll just do our stuff over here, that was a big problem too, because they weren't getting that income. You know, that's basically what happened with the Montgomery bus boycott. They realized the money that they were losing because of the black people were not using the transportation.
Right.
Who was using the transportation? It wasn't those white people that were able to afford cars, all right, and use their cars. They didn't use public transportation as much as the black people did.
Well, they're already trying to bring statements out that will try to stop this from happening. I've read opponents that have said that there were black landholders in the South that had slaves. So how can you make just the white people pay reparations when blacks themselves had slaves?
Blacks weren't allowed to own land. I don't know what this person is talking about.
No, it is a fact that there were black landholders that owned slaves themselves, but they did it to basically give them a job where they were safe. But there were black landholders.
But did they hold them as slaves? Or
Yeah,
were they paying them something?
Well, they were considered slaves. They were bought. But they were also put in a very safe place as opposed to being owned by a white landholder. Oh, there's all kinds of things they're pulling out of their, well, I can't say that, out of their pockets to stop this. And they're going to do everything they can.
As usual.
Look how creative we are. I mean, we came up with redlining to hold people back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we see somebody getting ahead and we don't like it, we'll figure out some way to prevent that from happening again.
But see, Tony, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's not just about that example that Dan gave that they want to throw out there is really ridiculous. Fine, let's just agree that happened, right? So what about all the other things, all the other pushbacks, the Jim Crow, segregation, all of that, redlining, all of that was created specifically to keep a group of people from aspiring to their potential.
Right.
Oh, I totally agree. And if you look at the amount, the difference in the landholders that were white and black, that alone makes the argument kind of null, as far as I'm concerned.
It's probably less than 1%.
Right.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Right.
Oh my God. Wow.
That's okay. You could also look back to immigration in the early 1900s, you know, when the Irish came over, the Germans came over, the Poles, Italians, whatever. They were relegated to their own area within the Lower East Side of New York City, but within 30, 40 years, they had mainstreamed into society fully.
Right.
And here we've got the blacks from 1865 still not being able to mainstream into the year 2000.
Right. But they would have you think that it's because black people are lazy.
Oh, that's a whole different stereotype conversation.
Yeah, that's the reason why black people can't break that feeling of being comfortable or wealthy in America, which that is not the case at all. The fact is, you know, there's another show that we could do where when black people actually become wealthy, it seems that somehow they try to topple them. You know, example, Wesley Snipes. They even tried to get Oprah at one point with the meat industry.
Right.
Oh, I remember that.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, O.J. Simpson, not a great example, but it's an example of, I remember when that was all going on, and black people, of course, didn't want it to be true that he killed his wife, his ex-wife. However, when the verdict came out not guilty and the black people were cheering,
right,
the ones who really believed or wanted to believe that he didn't do it, they were cheering because they felt like he got justice, right?
Right.
But there were also people cheering that felt that he did it, okay?
But got away with it as kind of payback.
Exactly. That cheering should tell you something about your system.
Right.
You know, because the bottom line is for centuries, black people have been jailed, even put to death, and for crimes that they didn't even do.
Right. I mean, the whole Tulsa thing, that was based on the preconception of the white elevator operator and the black kid who may or may not have touched her.
Yeah. You know, the story, we don't have the exact story, but the story that's out there is that he tripped and he, you know, accidentally touched her.
Right.
Right.
And then she started screaming.
Right.
And that whole thing, and he ran, And so then that whole thing evolved into, like, he tried to molest her.
So is that the birth of the Karen?
Maybe that is. The Karens were always there because, look, the birth of the Karen happened simply because as much as white women keep supporting these white men that are obviously segregationists, right?
Right.
The white Karen came to be because they didn't have a voice, right? So the voice that they had was basically, you know, the only voice that they had was over the people who weren't even considered people.
Right.
Because
the sad part is that the elevator operator that was there and witnessed the whole thing was a young black man.
Right.
And he wouldn't testify against the black guy that was being charged because he was afraid of what would happen to him.
And his family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Unbelievable.
So we have not come a long way.
No.
No, we haven't.
Nope. Not as far as people think that we have. We have not.
Well, I have gotten the book by Ms. Brown. It's called The Whiteness of Wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go over that, and I'm hoping that we can discuss that and further this wealth gap discussion on another show.
Nice.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we could probably go on for hours, but bottom line is we're not going to come up with a solution for this today, other than continue to talk about it, continue to educate people, and bring people to the table.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us today.
It was wonderful.
We want to thank you guys for spending this time with us on RaceAware. As always, if you found the podcast valuable, please subscribe, share, and leave us a comment. Let us know what you thought about it. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about next. Remember to visit our website. Our website is RaceAware.rocks. Until next time, stay safe, informed, and race aware, because truth matters.
Politics, protests, human rights, justice, equity, community. RaceAware.
We love bringing you the RaceAware podcast content. If you like what you hear, find our podcast valuable, and want to help us keep creating our content, show your support by spreading the word and partnering with us on Patreon for as little as $2.99 a month by going to patreon.com/RaceAware. Partners of the show get access to exclusive benefits such as private access to the RaceAware community, the digital downloads, voter power, free access to the live RaceAware lounge, supporter shoutouts, best of all, free RaceAware merchandise, and so much more. Check us out at patreon.com/